gender rights. To make this happen, we need to call for a great paradigm shift to reassert human agency over technology and explore how new avenues to adopt a human-centric approach to digitization with the feminist principles of inclusion, intersectionality, and systemic change at its core. And yes, to facilitate this kind of systemic change, transnational and multi-stakeholder coordinated action will be necessary. Mona mentioned the UN-backed Global Digital Compact, providing an important starting point to make our digital future more equitable and inclusive. However, as she noted, it will be critical here to ensure that women's voices and needs are included in the Digital Compact. The Generation Equality Action Coalition on Technology and Innovation, convened by UN Women, is also another opportunity for a collective, multi-sectoral, multi-stakeholder response. To close, let me reinforce some key actions we must undertake. We must prioritize digital equity to close the gender-digital divide. We need to do that by increasing women and girls' digital literacy and skills with an intersectional lens. And we need to be integrating gender perspectives in digital policies. We need to focus on education. We need to ensure that we transform STEM education. We need to promote the participation, employment, and leadership of women in tech and innovation. We need to adopt a gender-responsive technology design, development, and deployment by empowering women as technology creators. We need to finally strengthen fairness, transparency, and accountability by ensuring that we adopt mandatory measures to better identify, prevent, and mitigate the negative impacts of digital technology on women. And finally, Mona shared with us very good information around Audrey. We think that's an excellent effort to support these actions. And with that, I thank you.
Thank you so much, Nasrin Damzi, the Senior Policy Advisor for the UN Women, and I must tell that we really have enjoyed this week. Thank you so much for the UN Women for organizing these sessions, and I mean that we have an opportunity to meet each other after the 4 long years. It is very special for us, a women's organization, and I think everyone in this room today. And now I have the pleasure to invite Madam Ambassador Elina Kaakku and my chair, President of the National Council of Women, MP Sara Sofia Sirén, on board. Please be welcome to join us. So here we have two strong policymakers of women of Finland, and it's really a pleasure to be here, as mentioned, and to have a discussion with you. As we know that Finland is in its foreign policy strongly prioritizing women's rights and gender equality. So it would be an excellent opportunity now to know a little bit more what kind of topics and issues are taking place, and the human rights policy, women's rights policy. How does it function here in New York and in the work of United Nations?
Thank you so much. I hope you can hear me. Yes. It certainly functions here, as you can see during this week. There's, I was told, 8,700 NGOs present. There's more than 100 ministers. Actually, I heard the figure 125. That includes probably some vice ministers. So we have a very active New York community and United Nations community doing gender equality and promoting it. For Finland, obviously, we are multilateralists by definition. That's part of our genetics. That's something that supports our existence as an independent country. So we heavily lean on multilateralism, and I think one approach that we have here has to do with UN Women. We want to have a strong UN Women. We want to, we wouldn't ever be able to do bilaterally or nationally all that work that UN Women is able to do. So we've been from the outset supporting a strong UN Women, funding it, of course, offering talented people to work with the organization, and we hope it will grow into a real big actor within the UN system. So that's one way of promoting, building from inside also the multilateral system that would take better care of women's rights. We do have, of course, other things that we do, policy work, lots of pushing forward in meetings, lots of work that has to do with trying to change the way women's issues are looked at in those parts of the world where the problem is much bigger than ours in Finland. So policy work is, of course, very important. And third, I wanted to mention, and it was already mentioned here, is the Generation Equality campaign by the UN Women. We are co-champion of the Action Coalition on Women, Girls and Tech. And you know, when the CSW is over, the lights will be switched off, and you will all, most of you will go home. But the work has to continue globally with you and also here at the UN. And I think the Action Coalition is an excellent way of promoting the theme that we have now on the table. So it's lots of things that can be done multilaterally.
Yes, exactly. Finland is a small country, but that only means that we have to focus on our strengths. And the strengths of our foreign policy are equality, human rights, and cooperation, multilateral cooperation, obviously. And it shows. This is what we are here to do. We have the minister here, not only present but actively participating. We have a big delegation of NGOs, and we really strive to focus on our strengths: equality, women's rights. This is what we are here for, and that is something that we want to emphasize on our foreign policy onward as well, because it's what is right, but it's also what is good for our country, as it is a powerful message and the strength of our country.
Yes, and this strong UN Women and multi-approach, working together with other countries, with other women's organizations, and there's also the discussion on feminist foreign policy, and that's highly on the agenda this day.
Yes, and the women's organizations have been very active and cooperating and communicating with the Ministry of Foreign Affairs on feminist foreign policy. As mentioned, equality has always been a strength of Finland, so we are working on it to strengthen it in the coming years, and this is due to a very good cooperation.
We have discussed these days about technology, women's rights, human rights, and especially this morning as well, and the access of girls and women to internet worldwide. And I would like to ask, in this surroundings of the United Nations, how it's possible to promote the situation of the girls and women, let's say in Afghanistan or in Iran, for example, and how in overall perspective you work?
Well, in countries like Afghanistan, I think we would be in a completely different situation without the developments that have already taken place. I mean, there is ways and means to get in touch with women in Afghanistan, even if there's very little traveling going on actually. There are methods of getting news from them and also getting messages to them, and even supporting schools or education with digital methods. We've learned a lot actually during this week about what can be done, how much can be done in this respect. Of course, I mean, technology is not the solution alone, and we all know that we're facing quite incredible situation, in particular in Afghanistan. You have to look for a comparison in world history when it comes to this particular country. But technology can help, and I think we must try to utilize it to the maximum extent possible. I think what can be done in the UN more generally, I think it has to do with conflict areas, crisis areas also. The digital compact was mentioned, which is going to be a hugely important document. But we have to remember it's only a document. It's going to be a piece of paper, probably reflecting lots of views from around the world from different angles. There will be a compromise element in the document as well. The question is, how can the UN promote digitalization that also benefits women and girls in real world terms? And we have to remember we have an excellent tech envoy, Amandeb, who is doing excellent work. He has a tiny little office. It is very small, but we have to think through how the UN can influence digitalization in concrete ways, and there are ways to do it. The RC system, UN having a representative all over the world, coordinating UN activities. I think that's one option. How to support countries on the ground. With capacity building and with lots of know-how. We would definitely have to look at the UNDP, which is a multitasking organization. What can it do in terms of promoting concrete steps forward? And of course, companies. We need to involve companies. We need private sector in this effort. So the UN can do a lot. It's just that we are probably in the beginning of the route rather than on the route itself yet.
Thank you so much for the valuable work. How about the women's organizations?
I think it's the
Yes, technology and the development of technology has its sides. On one hand, it has increased freedom and possibilities for many girls and women around the world. And then on the other hand, it has downsides. In Finland, we see, for example, new research on how social media impacts the well-being, mental health of girls and youngsters, which is very worrying. And then on the other hand, we have, like we heard, tens or hundreds of millions of girls that do not have access to the internet at all, which limits their possibilities greatly. So we have to look at technology from both sides. The women's organizations, for example, the National Council of Women in Finland, we monitor what is happening globally, and currently we have had a strong focus on Afghanistan and the possibilities of digital solutions in Afghanistan. We have talked about distant learning possibilities, also something that Finland has great potential on helping with. Iran, that you mentioned, is another focus. It is really difficult to get information from Iran due to the fact that internet is being restricted. So we see it in our work, but we try to use the strengths that we have, and digital know-how is something that Finland and the organizations working in Finland and from Finland really can help.
Yes, and there's actually in these days already in English as well a report in which 30 women high-level human rights supporters from Afghanistan have been interviewed, and their experience of the past 20 years and also their wishes for the future. And is there something you would like to Lina?
Yes, this is great that you mentioned it because it's a perfect example on the work that the women's organizations do. We cannot speak on behalf of people, but we do our best to give a space for the women and girls of Afghanistan to have their voices heard. So we have this new report that interviewed almost 30 women from Afghanistan, asking how the cooperation between Finland and Afghanistan helped them and what their message is from now on. And the message is very clear: do not forget us, and we will not forget the women of Afghanistan.
And this is one of the excellent examples how we have been used to cooperate together with the Foreign Ministry of Finland and other ministries from the women's organizations, and it's been always very smooth, and we all have had our roles. This report was supported from the Ministry of Foreign Affairs. Is there something you could say with your experience about the cooperation between the state and the NGOs and women's organizations?
Well, certainly, and I try to be brief because this is my favorite topic. I think if you look back at Finland's history, you find out 100 years ago we were a developing country. In the beginning of previous century, we were actually a fragile state, nearly a failed state, and a very agriculture-based society, very poor, located high up in the north. You had to dig a hole in the ice if you wanted to get fish in the winter, and not everybody actually made it to the spring. They were very harsh conditions in those years, and I think this cooperation between governments, varying governments and ministries and women's organizations, I think they grew from the fact that everybody was needed in that society to move forward and to get development going really much faster. And women's role was very much the key. They were of course operating in more traditional areas, maybe education, healthcare, but there were strong women that pushed for all these things. And they also got organized very early. And I think we had sort of an integral growth of government work and women's work that made a fast-track development path for Finland, built a much more developed Finland that is now the least fragile state in the world, the most stable state in the world, and there was very much women who contributed in this work. So I think we need NGOs in other countries. This is my constant recommendation to many countries, many colleagues here from Global South also. NGOs are the best friends of governments because they identify the problems and they have ideas on how to solve the problems.
Thank you for the constant recommendation. Much appreciated. Sarah.
Well, this happens to be my favorite topic as well. So I'm happy to comment. Yes, indeed, Finland has a very strong NGO base, and the National Coalition of Women, for example, gathers together 73 NGOs working for equality and women's rights in Finland, and we have wonderful cooperation. This is where we base the work that we do, and we have wonderful cooperation with the states, with the government, with the ministries, several ministries. Lately, especially the Ministry of Foreign Affairs, the Ministry of Equality, obviously, and this is also a great opportunity to thank you, Elina, Mrs. Ambassador, for your support and cooperation and dialogue throughout these years. It's vital that the state, that the government acknowledges the work that NGOs do, because NGOs do so much work, often voluntarily based. And if it's not recognized, if it's not supported, if there is no cooperation, we cannot, there is not impact in the work. We are not using the impact to its full potential. So I totally agree that this has been one core reason for the development of Finland throughout the previous a bit over 100 years.
And if I may say, during these 4 years, past 4 years, there's like a new law for abortion, the sexual criminal law, which was mentioned, family leaves law, like a lot of good cooperation to promote women's rights and gender equality nationally, but also here in this event. Thank you so much, Elina, if I may say that, Sarah, Sofia. It was a great pleasure. Time flies. In these beautiful surroundings, I think we could stay like forever, but I think it's now for our closing address, next speaker. I had the great pleasure to introduce you Ambassador for Gender Equality, Katri Viinikka. Please, the floor is yours.
Good morning, everybody. Mr. Minister, Excellencies, dear participants. First of all, I would like to thank the Finnish women's organizations for arranging this traditional seminar, which really demonstrates the very close cooperation we have in Finland between the government and civil society actors. This was already mentioned in the previous discussion. And in a small country like Finland, we really have to harness all resources. We need the expertise and ideas of civil society organizations, also academia and private companies, to enrich our foreign policy as well as our domestic equality policy. And of course, we are also very happy to learn from the international civil society organizations that have been present, that are present here. And it's been also a special privilege to have you, Mrs. Mara Sinha, as keynote speaker, representing Equality Now, the winner of the 2019 International Gender Equality Prize of the Government of Finland. Dear friends, during the past year there have been some discussions in Finland on whether we take gender equality too much for granted, thinking it is in our DNA and relying on historical narratives. Permanent Representative Kalpo just referred to those narratives. They are true narratives, they are very important, but still there is a question whether they are enough. Ministry for Foreign Affairs commissioned a study on how Finland has promoted gender equality during this government term. The study noted inter alia that the status of gender equality and the tools to enhance it must be constantly re-evaluated to match the changing realities. And I think that digital transformation is really changing our world in an unprecedented way, as we have also heard hundreds of times during this week. Therefore, when we try to match the changing realities, the intersection of technology and gender equality is exactly where we have to look at. And this is why Finland has been a co-lead in the Generation Equality Action Coalition on Technology and Innovation from the very start of the Generation Equality campaign. And we are delighted to see that this year's CSW and the report of the Secretary General built upon the work carried out in that context. So we feel that this whole event actually partly builds upon the work that we have been doing in Finland and with our international partners. It has been mentioned also several times that our priority in this work is focusing on technology-facilitated gender-based violence, or online gender-based violence as we have called it. This violence and harassment, they pose a threat to democracy, and they really require global solutions. But we also must see the positive potential of technology, as has been mentioned also several times here. Tech companies are spearheading innovation and development, and we must ensure that this development becomes human rights based. And ideally, digital platforms could be used to transform discriminatory social norms. Technology and digital solutions could even help in addressing the most serious violations of the rights of women and girls, like those in Afghanistan and Iran. Innovative ways such as distance learning can be helpful, a way to ensure that girls can continue studying despite prohibitions set by authorities. And actually, my foreign minister has mentioned that as an example, distant learning that was arranged to Finnish children in Al-Hol refugee camp, but of course this was in a very small scale, but it could provide inspiration also to cooperation with Afghanistan. Of course, we also have to apply the intersectional lens, as has been also mentioned. Special attention must be paid to women and girls in vulnerable situations, such as women with disabilities, women belonging to ethnic minorities, and also elderly women. Finally, dear friends, it's essential to engage men and boys in this work. It's essential to engage all genders in this work. We really need men as allies, and there are not too many men present in this room at the moment. But in this spirit, I would like to extend special thanks to Minister Tuomas Blomqvist for being an active advocate for gender equality and also for our generation equality work during this parliament term. And I think we all wish you best of success also in the future. Once more, thank you to the organizers of this seminar, and thank you to all participants both in this room as well as those who are following virtually in Finland or elsewhere. I'm confident that we all feel very empowered after this event and after this whole week and the two weeks actually, and we are ready to work even harder for a more equal and more human rights based tech, which can be harnessed in the service of the rights of women and girls. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Ambassador Katledinik, and for your personal work for changing realities and for Finland. It's a commitment to generation equality, technology and innovation, and working with girls and women, but with all genders in the same time, and human rights of everyone, which is important. So it's time to wrap up, my colleague and dear friend.
Yes, thank you. Before you all go to other seminars, I'm sorry, I know we are a little bit over time, but I would like to thank you, everybody over here and also in the online as well, but especially our wonderful and excellent speakers. You really have empowered us today, that's for certain. And I can see also that the Helvi Sipilä's legacy is living strong, today here. And thank you also all the participators who has been organizing this event. I also warmly welcome you to next year to participate as well, because the seminar series is going to continue. And I also know that we have here so many important things here today that discussion will continue, that's for certain, and it really is really important. So hope to see you all here next year, and have a nice day, everyone. It's a lovely day in New York.
Thank you.